The colony ship Perseverance drifted through the black void of space, carrying 12,000 sleeping humans toward their new home. Inside the vessel, families dreamed of fresh starts on a world they had never seen. Children slept in cold storage pods, their parents beside them, all trusting that the ship's computers would wake them when they reached their destination. The journey would take 15 years, but to them it would feel like a single night's sleep. Captain Maria Santos was one of the few crew members awake during this leg of the journey. She sat in the command chair, monitoring the ship's systems while sipping coffee that tasted like recycled water, because that's exactly what it was. The navigation computer had flagged something unusual an hour ago. Their trajectory had shifted slightly due to gravitational interference from a rogue planetoid. Nothing dangerous, but it meant they would pass through a section of space they hadn't originally planned to cross. Maria pulled up the star charts. The area ahead was marked as restricted space, claimed by something called the Caltherian Empire. She had never heard of them. Humanity was still new to the greater galaxy, having only developed faster than light travel 20 years ago. The database showed that the Caltherians controlled a large swath of territory in this sector, but there was little other information available. She recorded a message, broadcasting it on all standard frequencies in multiple languages. This is the human colony ship Perseverance. We are a peaceful vessel carrying civilians to a new settlement. Our navigation system experienced an error, and we are passing through your space. We mean no harm and will be gone within 6 hours. Please acknowledge. The message repeated automatically every 10 minutes. Maria waited for a response, watching the communications panel. Space felt particularly empty that night. She thought about waking the first officer, but decided against it. This was probably nothing. Most species humanity had encountered so far had been curious but welcoming. A simple navigation mistake wouldn't cause problems. 40 minutes later, her sensors detected 3 ships approaching at high speed. They were big, much bigger than the Perseverance. Military vessels, judging by their energy signatures. Maria's heart began to race. She sent another message, this one more urgent. Approaching vessels, this is Perseverance. We are an unarmed civilian ship. Please respond. Nothing. The ships moved into attack formation. Maria slammed her hand on the emergency alert. Klaxons began to wail through the ship's corridors. All crew to stations. This is not a drill. She tried to change course, but the Perseverance was a colony ship, not a fighter. It was slow and heavy, loaded with equipment, supplies, and 12,000 human lives. The lead Caltherian vessel opened fire without warning. Energy beams tore through the Perseverance's hull like paper. Explosions rippled down the ship's spine. Maria saw the life support indicators for sections 3 through 7 go dark. Thousands of pods, each containing a dreaming human, were suddenly exposed to the vacuum of space. She tried to send a distress signal back to human space, but the communications array exploded before the message could complete. The ship shuddered and groaned around her. Through the viewport, she could see debris floating away, pieces of hull plating and personal belongings spinning off into the darkness. Someone's teddy bear tumbled past, frozen and alone. The second volley hit the reactor. Maria had just enough time to think about her daughter, safe back on Earth, before the Perseverance came apart in a brilliant flash of light. Commander Velshara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the debris field expand on the view screen. The destruction of the human vessel had taken less than 3 minutes. Efficient, clean. She turned to her tactical officer. Any survivors? Negative, Commander. The vessel is completely destroyed. Good. File the standard report. Unknown vessel violated restricted space, refused to alter course, was neutralized as per Imperial protocol. She sat back in her command chair, Resume patrol route. 3 weeks later, the silence from the Perseverance reached Earth. 12,000 people had simply vanished. Their families waited for news. The government launched an investigation. It took another 2 weeks to piece together what had happened from the partial distress signal and long-range sensor data. When the truth came out, Earth went quiet. There were no protests in the streets, no angry speeches from politicians. People simply stopped and thought about what it meant. 12,000 humans killed for a navigation error. Killed without warning, without communication, without mercy. The Caltherian Empire received humanity's response 4 weeks after the incident. It wasn't a diplomatic message. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a single human warship that appeared at the edge of Caltherian space and began broadcasting on all frequencies. You made one mistake. You showed us who you are. Then, the ship vanished back into the darkness. Commander Velshara received the intelligence report about the human transmission. She read it twice, then archived it. The Caltherians had been the dominant power in the sector for 300 years. They had crushed dozens of species who had challenged them. These humans were newcomers, barely able to travel between stars. They controlled perhaps 20 systems at most. This was nothing to worry about. The High Council agreed. They reviewed humanity's military records, purchased from information brokers who traded in such data. Humans had small fleets, basic weapons, and no significant victories against any major power. Their threat assessment came back as minimal. Their posturing, one council member said, trying to seem dangerous to avoid further conflict. Standard behavior from inferior species. Another council member suggested a punitive expedition. We should teach them the cost of threats. Claim a few of their worlds as tribute. They'll learn their place quickly enough. The motion passed easily. The 7th Battle Fleet was assigned the task. 300 ships, enough firepower to crack planets, led by Commander Velshara herself. It was considered more than sufficient for such a minor operation. The fleet would enter human space, destroy any resistance, and occupy key worlds. Standard procedure. The Caltherians had done it countless times before as Velshara prepared her ships for departure. She reviewed the human threat one final time. The message kept repeating in her mind. You made one mistake. What mistake? The Caltherians had simply enforced their territory. That was strength, not error. These humans would learn, just like all the others had learned. The strong survived. The weak submitted or died. It was the way of the galaxy. The 7th Fleet entered faster than light travel, heading toward human space. Behind them, the Council celebrated another problem solved before it could grow. None of them noticed that human ships had been quietly mapping Caltherian patrol routes for weeks. None of them knew that human engineers had been working around the clock, building weapons that didn't follow conventional galactic warfare doctrine. None of them understood that they had just made their biggest mistake. They had shown humanity that mercy was weakness. And humanity was a fast learner. The 7th Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space. 300 warships arranged in the traditional Caltherian attack formation. Commander Velshara stood at her command station, expecting to see human defense fleets scrambling to meet them. Instead, her sensors showed almost nothing. The nearest human colony, a world called New Providence, appeared to be functioning normally. Lights from cities, energy signatures from power plants, but no military presence at all. Scan for cloaked vessels, she ordered. A tactical officer worked the console for several minutes before shaking his head. Nothing, Commander. If there are ships here, they're using technology we can't detect. Velshara frowned. That seemed unlikely. She ordered the fleet to advance toward New Providence. As they approached, civilian traffic continued as normal. Cargo ships moved between the planet and orbital stations. It was as if the humans didn't know a Caltherian battle fleet had just entered their space. "Send the standard surrender demand," she ordered. The message broadcast across all channels. The human government had 1 hour to submit to Caltherian authority or face bombardment. Valshara waited, watching the countdown timer. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. At 53 minutes, her communications officer reported incoming transmission. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. Middle-aged, calm, wearing a simple gray uniform. "This is Admiral Chun of the Human Defense Force. I've received your demand." "Then you understand the situation," Valshara replied. "Surrender now and casualties will be minimal." Chun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I understand perfectly. You came here expecting us to fight you the way you fight each other. Formation against formation. Honor and tradition. That's not going to happen." The transmission cut off. Valshara stared at the blank screen. That was their response? Tactical. Launch the bombardment drones. Target their orbital stations. 50 drones detached from the fleet and accelerated toward New Providence's orbital infrastructure. They were 30 seconds from their targets when the first one exploded. Then another. Then a dozen more. Small objects, barely larger than shuttlecraft, slammed into the drones at incredible speed. The impact alone was enough to destroy them. What was that? Valshara demanded. "Unknown projectiles, Commander. They appear to be unmanned vehicles packed with explosive material. They're coming from the asteroid belt." Valshara pulled up the tactical display. The asteroid belt was full of small human vessels, each one accelerating to ramming speed before her targeting systems could lock on. They were sacrificing their ships, using them as missiles. It was wasteful, primitive, and devastatingly effective against the slow-moving drones. "Launch fighters. Clear those asteroids." Caltherian fighter craft streamed from the larger vessels, heading toward the belt. But as they approached, the human ships simply shut down their engines and went dark. They became indistinguishable from the thousands of other asteroids drifting through the belt. When the fighters got close, the human ships would suddenly ram the fighter, and both would explode. It took 3 hours to clear the belt, and Valshara lost 47 fighters doing it. 47 trained pilots dead, without destroying a single significant human military asset. Just small, cheap attack drones operated remotely. "Commander, we're detecting movement on the planet's surface. The human population appears to be evacuating." Valshara watched the sensor data. Thousands of transport ships were lifting off from New Providence, carrying people away from the cities. They weren't even trying to hide it. Where are they going? Unknown. They're scattering in multiple directions. This wasn't how invasions worked. The defenders were supposed to fight for their homes, not abandon them. "Can we intercept the transports?" "They're civilian vessels, Commander. Lightly armed at best." Valshara made a decision. "Let them go. Focus on securing the planet." She paused. "Send landing forces to occupy the capital city." 4 transport ships descended toward New Providence, carrying 2,000 Caltherian Marines. They landed in the central plaza of the capital city, which was completely empty. Buildings stood vacant, doors hanging open, personal belongings scattered in the streets as if people had left in a hurry. Captain Thren led the first squad into the government building. It was empty except for furniture and equipment. No defenders, no resistance, nothing. "This is strange," he reported over the radio. "The humans just left everything." "Secure the building," came the response from orbit. "Establish a command post." Thren's squad moved through the corridors, checking rooms. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. He was about to report the building secure when his scanner detected something odd. Energy readings in the walls, behind the panels, under the floors. Everywhere. "Get out," he screamed. "Everyone out now." They made it 15 meters before the building exploded. The blast was massive, a carefully planned demolition that brought the entire structure down. Thren's squad was buried under tons of rubble. Across the city, other buildings began to explode. The humans had rigged everything before leaving. 400 Caltherian Marines died in those explosions. The survivors retreated to their ships, only to find that the landing pads had also been rigged. More explosions. More casualties. On her flagship, Valshara watched the disaster unfold. The humans weren't fighting them. They were making occupation impossible, destroying everything rather than let it be taken. Withdraw the ground forces. If they want to destroy their own colony, let them. But the attacks didn't stop. Over the next 3 days, small human ships appeared at random, striking Caltherian vessels and vanishing before anyone could respond. They came from behind moons, from inside asteroid fields, from places where sensors couldn't track them. Each attack destroyed or damaged a Caltherian ship before the attackers disappeared. The 7th Fleet began to spread out, trying to cover more space. That's when the humans struck at their supply lines. Fuel convoys were ambushed. Ammunition transports were destroyed. The humans didn't fight honorable battles. They hit wherever the Caltherians were weakest and ran before reinforcements could arrive. Valshara requested additional forces from the High Council. "These humans fight like criminals," she reported. "They have no honor, no sense of proper warfare. They need to be taught a lesson." The Council approved sending 2 more fleets. 600 ships total. Surely that would be enough to crush this insignificant species. But as those fleets traveled toward human space, something else was happening. Human intelligence operatives had infiltrated Caltherian-controlled systems. They weren't soldiers. They were civilians who looked like any other species, who spoke the local languages, who blended in. And they were gathering information, mapping defenses, identifying weaknesses. The Caltherians were so focused on human space that they didn't notice the enemy already behind their lines, waiting for the right moment to strike. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display from his command ship, hidden in a nebula. The Caltherians were predictable. They fought the same way every time, following the same doctrines, using the same formations. Humanity didn't have the numbers or technology to match them in direct combat, so humanity wouldn't fight fair. They would fight smart. They would make every Caltherian victory cost more than it was worth. They would turn the enemy's strength into weakness. Chun thought about the Perseverance, about the 12,000 people who died for nothing more than a navigation error. The Caltherians had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. Humanity had learned, just not the lesson the Caltherians intended. 6 months into the war, Commander Valshara sat in her quarters reviewing casualty reports. The 7th Fleet, once 300 ships strong, was down to 127 operational vessels. 2 more fleets had arrived to reinforce her, but they were suffering losses just as quickly. Every day brought new attacks, new disasters, new impossible situations. The humans had learned Caltherian patrol patterns and exploited every gap. They had studied Caltherian shield technology and developed weapons specifically designed to bypass it. They had taken everything the Caltherians did well and found a way to counter it. Worst of all, the occupied human colonies were nightmares. The Caltherians had secured 15 worlds, but secured was a joke. Every building might contain explosives. Every civilian might be a resistance fighter. The humans didn't wear uniforms or follow rules. They struck at supply depots, poisoned water headed to Caltherian bases, hacked life support systems in occupied buildings. Garrison duty had become more dangerous than combat patrols. Valshara's communication panel chimed. "Commander, intelligence has located a major human defensive position. The colony of Proxima Threshold. Long-range sensors show significant military buildup. Finally, Velshara thought. A real battle. A chance to use their superior numbers and firepower the way they were meant to be used. She pulled up the tactical data. Proxima Threshold was a mining colony, moderately populated, with strong defensive platforms in orbit. Intelligence estimated 3 human battle groups defending it. This was the opportunity she needed. A decisive victory would break the human spirit, show them that guerrilla tactics couldn't win against true military might. She requested permission from the High Council to commit 2 full fleets to the attack. 400 ships. Overwhelming force. Permission was granted immediately. The Council was growing anxious. This war was supposed to have ended months ago. Resources were being drained. Other subject species were watching, wondering if the mighty Caltherians could be challenged. A major victory was essential that the combined Caltherian fleet gathered at a staging point, just outside the Proxima Threshold system. Velshara addressed her commanders via holoconference. This is what we've been waiting for. The humans have finally decided to make a stand. We will crush them completely. No mercy, no quarter. Show them what happens when they challenge the Caltherian Empire. 400 warships entered the system in perfect formation. Sensors immediately detected the human presence. 3 battle groups, just as intelligence had reported, positioned around the colony world. But something felt wrong to Velshara. The humans weren't maneuvering. They were just holding position. All ships advanced to attack range. Prepare bombardment. The Caltherian fleet moved forward. The human ships opened fire, but it was weak, disorganized. They were falling back toward the planet. Velshara felt a moment of satisfaction. Finally, the humans were breaking. Finally, they understood they couldn't win. Her fleet reached orbit around Proxima Threshold. The human defenders had retreated to the surface, taking shelter in the colony's defensive bunkers. Standard procedure now was to send landing forces to dig them out. But Velshara had a better idea. Launch orbital bombardment. Level every military installation on the surface. The order went out. Hundreds of weapons locked onto targets below. But before the Caltherians could fire, every human structure on the planet lit up on sensors. Every building, every mine, every installation. Energy readings were spiking everywhere. Vel single quotes. Shara had 1 second to understand what was happening before Proxima Threshold exploded. The humans had evacuated everyone. The entire colony was one massive bomb, rigged with enough nuclear and antimatter explosives to create a miniature star. The blast wave hit the Caltherian fleet like a hammer. Ships close to the planet were vaporized instantly. Those further out had their shields overloaded, their systems fried by electromagnetic pulse. In 30 seconds, the Caltherians lost 190 ships. 210 remained, most of them damaged. Velshara's flagship survived because it had been at the back of the formation, but she watched in horror as her fleet burned. Then the real human attack began. While the Caltherians had committed everything to Proxima Threshold, human forces had struck across 4 different sectors. They hit supply bases, shipyards, mining facilities, civilian infrastructure. Not trying to hold territory, just destroying everything they could reach. Making the war expensive. Making it hurt. The High Council convened an emergency session. The war was spiraling out of control. Casualties were mounting. Resource production was falling. Other species in Caltherian territory were becoming restless. There were rumors of rebellions being planned, inspired by human resistance. How is this possible? One council member demanded. They're primitives. They have fewer ships, older technology, smaller territory. The military representative tried to explain. They don't fight the way we fight. They don't value honor or tradition. They care only about results. Every ship they lose, they learn from it and build something better. Every tactic we use, they develop a counter. They're adapting faster than we can respond. Then adapt ourselves. We're trying, but our entire military structure is built around traditional warfare. We can't just abandon 300 years of doctrine. The humans have no such limitations. They're willing to try anything, sacrifice anything to win. Valshara was summoned before the council to give her assessment. She stood in the grand chamber, looking up at the council members seated in their high chairs. What do we need to defeat the humans? They asked. She considered lying, giving them an answer they wanted to hear. But the truth was necessary now. More than we have. The humans aren't fighting to conquer territory. They're fighting to make this war too expensive for us to continue. Every world we take costs us ships, resources, and lives. Every victory is a defeat. They're willing to destroy their own colonies rather than let us have them. They're willing to die by the thousands if it means killing hundreds of us. That's barbaric. Yes, Valshara agreed. It's also effective. We trained them. When we destroyed the Perseverance, we taught them that mercy is weakness. We taught them that they can't afford to follow the rules. So they don't, and now we're paying the price. A council member leaned forward. Are you saying we should surrender to these creatures? I'm saying we should negotiate peace while we still can, before they bleed us dry, before other species realize we can be beaten. The council erupted in argument. Surrender to humans? Impossible. The Caltherian Empire didn't surrender. They would send more fleets, more resources, whatever it took. But privately, each council member was doing the calculations. The war was costing more every day. Public support was failing. The mighty military was being ground down by an enemy they had dismissed as insignificant. And the humans showed no signs of stopping. If anything, they were getting stronger, learning faster, becoming more dangerous with each passing week. Deep in human space, Admiral Chun reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Caltherians were weakening. Their economy was strained. Their military was overstretched. Other species under Caltherian control were watching, waiting to see what would happen. Good, Chung thought. Let them watch. Let them see what happens when you mistake human mercy for human weakness. The war wasn't over yet. But humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for something else now. Revenge. 1 year after the destruction of the Perseverance, the Caltherian Empire was crumbling. What had started as a simple punitive expedition had become an existential crisis. 7 fleets, over 1,000 ships, had been committed to human space. Less than half remained operational. The economy, once robust from tribute and conquest, was failing under the weight of military spending. Production facilities struggled to keep up with demand for ships and weapons. Worst of all, the subject species were rebelling. The Thakari had declared independence. The Morvex had attacked Caltherian garrisons on their homeworld. A dozen other species were watching, waiting for the right moment to break free. The empire that had stood for 3 centuries was coming apart. Commander Valshara, now Supreme Commander of all Caltherian forces, understood the truth that the High Council refused to accept. They couldn't win this war. The humans had made it unwinnable. Every battle cost more than it gained. Every victory came with losses the Caltherians couldn't sustain. She made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Without authorization from the Council, she opened a communication channel to Admiral Chun. The human's face appeared on her screen, older and more tired than in their first conversation, but still showing that cold determination. I want to discuss terms, Valshara said. This war has gone on long enough. We can negotiate a peace that benefits both sides. Chung was quiet for a long moment. Peace? You want peace now? After 12,000 dead? After a year of trying to crush us. After a year of trash us. Now that it's costing you too much, you want to stop. Yes, we made a mistake attacking you. We acknowledge that. Let's end this before more lives are lost. You don't get it, Chun replied softly. You think this is about territory or resources or pride. It's not. You killed 12,000 unarmed civilians because they made a navigation error. You didn't ask questions. You didn't give warnings. You just killed them. And you thought that would teach us to fear you. Velshara felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying? I'm saying you don't get to surrender. You don't get to negotiate. You taught us that the galaxy is a dangerous place, where mercy is weakness. We learned that lesson very well. Now you're going to learn what it means when humans decide someone is an existential threat. The communication ended. Velshara stared at the blank screen, understanding flooding through her. The humans weren't trying to win concessions or territory. They were trying to eliminate the Caltherian Empire as a threat, permanently. She immediately contacted the High Council. We need to pull back all forces. Defend the core worlds. Now. But it was too late. While the Caltherians had been trying to hold human territory, human forces had been preparing a massive offensive. Intelligence operatives who had spent months infiltrating Caltherian space transmitted coordinates and tactical data. Supply lines were mapped. Defense platforms were cataloged. Weaknesses were identified. The human counterattack hit like a tsunami. Fleets appeared simultaneously across 15 systems, striking military bases, shipyards, and production facilities. But they weren't using the small hit-and-run tactics anymore. These were full battle fleets, equipped with weapons that the Caltherians had never seen before. Human engineers had spent the entire war reverse engineering captured Caltherian technology, improving it, making it more efficient. Human ships now matched Caltherian vessels in firepower and defense, but they retained their unpredictable tactics. They didn't line up in formation. They didn't follow predictable patterns. They fought like a swarm, overwhelming Caltherian forces through chaos and aggression. The Battle of Calth Prime. The Caltherian homeworld began on a cold morning as 3 human battle fleets emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Every available Caltherian ship had been pulled back to defend their homeworld. It was their last stand, their final chance to stop the human advance. Velshara commanded the defense from her flagship. She had 800 ships, the largest Caltherian fleet assembled in decades. The humans had perhaps 400. For once, the Caltherians had superior numbers. For once, they would fight on their terms, defending their home. The battle was brutal. The Caltherians fought with desperate courage, knowing they were defending everything they had built over 3 centuries. They used every tactic, every weapon, every advantage they possessed. And for a while, it seemed like it might be enough dot, but the humans just kept coming. When their ships were damaged, they rammed Caltherian vessels. When their weapons ran out, they used their ships as missiles. They fought with a ferocity that shocked even Velshara, who thought she had seen everything in this terrible war. The battle raged for 3 days. Debris filled the space around Calth Prime. Ships burned and exploded. Thousands died on both sides. But slowly, inevitably, the Caltherian defense collapsed. There were too many damaged ships, too few reinforcements, too much exhaustion. On the 3rd day, Velshara's flagship was hit by concentrated fire. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring, fires breaking out across multiple decks. She knew it was over. The Caltherian military, the pride of the Empire, no longer existed as a cohesive force. She sent one final message to Admiral Chun. You've won. Please, no more killing. We surrender. Chun's face appeared on the screen one last time. He looked as exhausted as she felt. We're not going to bombard your planet. We're not going to kill civilians. That's the difference between us and you. But the Caltherian Empire is done. You're going to break apart into independent systems. You're going to disarm. And you're going to remember what happened here. The transmission ended. True to his word, the human fleets didn't attack Calth Prime itself. They simply left, moving on to the next system, ensuring that Caltherian military power was completely dismantled. In the weeks that followed, the Empire collapsed. Without military force to hold it together, subject species declared independence. The Caltherian core worlds, exhausted and bankrupt, couldn't stop them. Within 2 months, an empire that had lasted 3 centuries was reduced to a handful of systems. Humanity established itself as a major power in the sector, but other species gave them a wide berth. The newcomers had proven themselves to be incredibly dangerous when threatened. Trade relations were established, diplomatic channels opened, but everyone was careful. Very careful. 5 years later, Velshara taught at a military academy on Calth Prime, training the next generation of Caltherian officers. The empire was gone, but her people remained, humbled and wiser. A young student asked her one day what she had learned from the human war. She thought for a long moment before answering. I learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the best weapons or the largest fleet. Is the one who refuses to lose. The one who learns from every defeat and comes back stronger. We thought destroying one unarmed ship would teach humans their place in the galaxy. Instead, it taught them they could never afford to show weakness. We created the very thing we feared most. She paused, looking at the young faces before her. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. Never assume that mercy is weakness. And never, ever make the mistake of thinking that being stronger means you'll win. The humans taught us that. I hope we never forget. Across the galaxy, humanity continued to expand, explore, and build. But they also maintained a military that shocked other species with its size and readiness. The lesson of the perseverance was carved into monuments, taught in schools, remembered in ceremonies. 12,000 people who died because one species thought they could kill humans without consequence. The galaxy learned a new truth that year. Humans could be kind. They could be peaceful. They could be reasonable. But if you made them your enemy, if you showed them that mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford, then they would become something else entirely. Something relentless. Something that wouldn't stop until the threat was eliminated. The Caltherians had made one mistake. They had shown humans what they truly were. And humanity had shown them something in return. They had shown them what humans become when you take away everything they have to lose.